Julian Cole parked his car near the entrance to Ridgeview Estates a little after 9 in the morning, pulled out his camera bag, and started working his way down the block one house at a time. He photographed roof lines, gutters, siding, the occasional cracked driveway. It was slow work, but it paid well, and after 15 years in the insurance documentation business, he barely thought about it anymore. Just angles, light, and the next address on his list. He didn't notice the woman watching him from a kitchen window 3 houses down. Deborah Colston had been standing at her sink for almost 10 minutes, dish towel still in her hand, watching a man she didn't recognize move slowly from house to house with a camera. She didn't walk outside. She didn't call out to him. She picked up her phone instead. "There's a man photographing the houses on my street," she told the dispatcher. "I don't know who he is. He's been at it for a while." Julian heard the car before he saw it. Tires on the asphalt, slow and deliberate, pulling up along the curb behind him. 2 officers got out. The one closest to him, a woman with a name tag reading Reyes, kept her hand near her belt without resting on it. "Sir, can I see some identification?" Julian lowered the camera. "Of course. It's in my back pocket. I'm going to reach for it now." He said it out loud, evenly, the way he'd learned 2 years ago. Not out of fear exactly, more out of a tired kind of habit, the same way some people check twice that they've locked the front door. Julian Cole was 42 years old and ran a small property documentation business out of a converted garage 2 towns over. Insurance surveys, mostly, the kind of unglamorous work that involved photographing every roofline and fence in a neighborhood so an underwriter somewhere could calculate risk. He'd been hired 3 weeks earlier by Ridgeview Estates' own management company, ahead of the HOA's annual insurance renewal. The job had been emailed to every resident in advance. A scheduled visit. Nothing unusual about it at all. He carried a laminated work order in his bag, along with a signed authorization letter from the property manager. He'd never actually needed to show it before. Most people just waved and kept walking their dogs. Officer Reyes read the work order slowly, then the authorization letter, checking the date against the one printed at the bottom of the page. She looked over at her partner, Officer Doyle, who shrugged. "This all checks out," Reyes said. "Sorry for the trouble, Mr. Cole." "Happens," Julian said. He meant it more literally than she probably understood. Reyes glanced down the street. Deborah was standing on her porch now, arms folded, watching from a distance the way people do when they're trying to look like they're not watching. Reyes walked toward her. "Ma'am, can I get your name for the report?" Deborah blinked. "I'm the one who called. I'm the HOA president here. I understand. I still need it for the report." "What report?" "He's the one who was wandering around with a—" "He had documentation for authorized work," Reyes said, not unkindly, just plainly. "I need your name, ma'am." Deborah gave it, slowly, like she wasn't sure why a routine call would need a report at all. Deborah Colston was 51, and she hadn't always been the kind of person who called the police over a man with a camera. 8 months earlier, 2 houses on the next street over had been broken into within the same week. Daylight burglaries, both while the owners were at work. Nothing violent, but enough to rattle a community that had never dealt with anything like it before. Deborah had helped organize the neighborhood watch meeting afterward. She genuinely believed at the time that she was being careful rather than suspicious. What she hadn't noticed about herself, in the months since, was how that carefulness had started to narrow. She wasn't calling about every unfamiliar car or every delivery van. Just some of them. She might not have put it that way herself. But if the department had asked her to walk back through every call she'd made in the past year, she wouldn't have liked what the pattern actually showed. Officer Reyes didn't think much about the call until she filed the report that afternoon and the system flagged the address automatically. A routine notice the department used for any location with repeat, unfounded calls. 5, in this case, over the past 14 months. She pulled the file before her shift ended, mostly out of curiosity. The first call had been about a landscaping crew, the same crew that had mowed that lawn every week for 2 years. The second was a delivery driver, parked exactly where his app told him to park, gone within 6 minutes. The third involved a teenager waiting in a car outside a neighbor's house. His own mother's house, it turned out, though the report never mentioned that anyone had asked him. The fourth was a contractor doing roof repairs, with a signed work order taped to his own windshield the entire time. The fifth was Julian. None of the 5 calls had led to an arrest, a citation, or a confirmed problem of any kind. Reyes didn't write anything dramatic in her notes. She wrote what the policy required. Pattern flagged for records review. No findings in 5 incidents. Referred to community relations for standard follow-up. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at Ridgeview Estates management office. Routine language on department letterhead, addressed to the board rather than to any one resident. It noted that one address on record had generated 5 suspicious person calls over 14 months, none resulting in findings, and recommended the community review its policies around reporting unfamiliar individuals engaged in lawful activity. It didn't name Deborah. The property manager forwarded it to the board. The next scheduled board meeting had more people in the room than usual. Word travels fast in a community with one shared parking lot and a group chat nobody ever leaves. A landscaper named Farid Hassan stood up during public comment. He'd been maintaining lawns on the street for 6 years. "Nobody called the police on my crew before Mrs. Colston moved in," he said. "I just want that on the record." An older resident, Colette Marsh, added something nobody else in the room had known. Her nephew had been the teenager in the 3rd report. He still asked her, she said, whether he needed to bring his ID every time he picked her up. He'd started parking around the corner instead, walking the last stretch so no one would see the car sitting outside her house. A 3rd resident, a man named Owen Petrakis who'd lived on the street for 11 years, stood up next. He said he liked Deborah. He'd borrowed a ladder from her more than once. But 5 calls were 5 calls, he said, and every one of them had been about someone who didn't look like the rest of the block. Nobody argued with that. Not even Deborah. Deborah sat near the front. She didn't argue with any of it. For the first time that evening, she looked like she was replaying the past year in her head. Near the end of the meeting, a resident named Priyanka Oduya, a retired compliance officer, raised her hand. "I have a different question," she said. "Has the board reviewed the security services contract we approved last spring? I don't remember seeing it go out for competitive bid. It wasn't obviously connected to anything." A few board members exchanged glances, unsure why she was bringing it up now. But Priyanka had been on enough compliance committees to know that when someone starts asking about safety, it's worth checking what else changed around the same time. It took her most of the following week, not an afternoon, to pull it all together. The HOA's budget from the previous spring included a new line item, enhanced neighborhood security monitoring, $34,000 a year. The line appeared in the budget that spring, not long after the 2 burglaries, approved by a board vote with Deborah recommending it. The contract had gone to a company called Colston Sentry Group, without any competitive bidding, on Deborah's own recommendation as board president. Priyanka pulled the state's business registry next. It took her 2 more days to get a clear answer because the paperwork listed a holding company first, and she had to trace it back 1 more layer to find the actual registered owner. It was Deborah's brother. Priyanka brought the contract itself to the next meeting, not just the dollar figure. Monthly patrol drive-bys, a shared camera monitoring line, an incident reporting service that, as far as anyone could tell, had never actually been used by a single resident besides Deborah. The board treasurer read through it twice before asking the obvious question out loud. "Did you know your brother owned this company when you recommended it?" "He's qualified," Deborah said. "That's not against any rule." "Nobody's saying it's against a rule," the treasurer replied. "We're asking if you disclosed it." Deborah didn't answer. She hadn't disclosed the relationship, and everyone in the room understood what that meant. The board voted on 3 things that night: to end the Colston Sentry Group contract and reopen the position for competitive bidding, to require written disclosure of any board member's family financial ties to HOA vendors going forward, and to request Deborah's resignation, citing the undisclosed conflict alongside the pattern in the department's letter. All 3 passed. None of the votes were close. Julian found out almost by accident. The property manager called to apologize again, a little awkwardly, and mentioned everything that had come out since. Julian didn't say much. He'd been through enough versions of this story that a tidy ending didn't always feel like the point. He did say one thing before hanging up. "I hope the next guy who walks down that street with a camera doesn't have to carry a copy of his own paperwork just to prove he belongs there." Deborah resigned the following week rather than face a formal vote. The security contract went to a smaller local firm with no connection to anyone on the board, at less than half the price. The 5 residents from the earlier calls never received any formal compensation. There wasn't really a process for that. But the new board read a written acknowledgement aloud at the next meeting, naming what had happened and stating plainly that it shouldn't have. Ridgeview Estates also adopted a simple new policy: a shared online calendar listing every scheduled contractor, delivery, and inspection for the week, checkable in under a minute before anyone picked up the phone. 6 months later, Julian was working a different neighborhood, camera in hand, moving slowly down another quiet street. A woman stepped onto her porch as he approached. "Are you here for the insurance photos?" she asked. The email said someone would stop by today. For half a second, his shoulders tensed anyway. The old habit, faster than he could stop it. "Yes, ma'am. That's me." She waved and went back inside. Julian raised the camera and took the shot. Some days that was the whole story. A woman who'd checked her email first. A man who got to do his job without narrating his own hands. He counted that as a good day. If you've ever had someone try to weaponize against you, leave a comment below. Tell me what happened. Tell me how it ended. And if you enjoyed this story, subscribe so you don't miss the next one.